Who is William Shakespeare, and why is he still famous today?
It is uncertain when William Shakespeare was born. However, we do know that he was baptized on April 25th, 1564. He was born in Stratford-upon-Avon, and his parents were John Shakespeare and Mary Arden.
It was not uncommon to not know the exact day a person was born during Shakespeare's time. The only records that were kept were church records. Thus, the baptismal date is known, but not the actual birth date. Speaking of Shakespeare's time, the era that he lived in was known as the Elizabethan era. The era took its name after this lovely woman, Queen Elizabeth.
Shakespeare and his siblings. Shakespeare was one of 8. The oldest was Joan, then came Margaret, William was the third, then there was Gilbert, Joan, Anne, Richard, and Edmund. Because of the high infant mortality rate, Joan and Margaret and Anne all died while they were young. Joan was 2 months old, Margaret was 1 year old, and Anne was 7 years old.
Remember that during Shakespeare's time, Stratford-upon-Avon was not nearly as nice as it looks now. The bubonic plague, or Black Plague, was rampant during his time period.
Fast forward to Shakespeare's schooling. It is believed that Shakespeare left school at around age 14, which was not that uncommon during his time. Shakespeare's love life was not like the romances that he wrote about. In fact, he was in a love triangle. Anne Whately was his one and true love. However, he made a mistake and got Anne Hathaway pregnant. She was 26 and he was 18.
Because of this, Shakespeare and Anne Hathaway had a shotgun wedding, which is a wedding that is hurried due to an unexpected pregnancy. Shakespeare had 3 kids with Anne Hathaway. The oldest daughter was Susanna. Then they had twins Hamnet and Judith 2 years after Susanna was born. Unfortunately, Hamnet died of unknown causes at age 11. Fast forward again, and we see Shakespeare has moved to London to pursue his acting and writing career. Believe it or not, our famous playwright was famous in his time for being a poet, though that did not get him any money. What did make him money was his acting. Shakespeare joined forces with 2 other men, and they started their own acting company, the Chamberlain's Men. Later, the company would change its name to the King's Men. The King's Men became the largest traveling acting company in England. At this time, Shakespeare had an idea to build a central structure where the people and royalty could come watch plays. It would become known as the Globe Theatre. Scholars believe it was a 3-story open-air amphitheater with 100 feet diameter that could hold 3,000 audience members. Remember, this was way before fire regulations and a maximum occupancy limit. Because of the tight quarters in the Globe Theatre and the Black Plague running rampant, the Globe Theatre had to be shut down.
There is good news for this structure. We now have a replica of the old structure today. Here, we see the stage, which is a little more ornate than would normally be. We have the middle balcony. You can see the upper and then the lower below it. This is where the Queen would come, Queen Elizabeth, remember? And then here we have a faraway shot where you can see the stage is more or less ornate and more simple. And then you can see the 3 different levels. The lower caste or lower class people would sit here, and then those who could afford it could sit up here, and then the royalty was on the top balcony. And again, this is where Queen Elizabeth would come and enjoy the theater.
With today's technology, you can go inside the Globe Theatre without leaving the classroom. Here we see the stage. It is not elaborate at all. They did not have the special effects million-dollar movies that we have today. They had to use this thing that we still have today called their imagination. An example of this is fairies flying across the stage with ropes that were visible.
The bottom area here was designated for the lower class. The upper class was up in the upper balcony. These seats were sold for more money than these ones. That's why the lower class was able to
afford these ones, while the upper class could afford these upper two balconies. Queen Elizabeth was an ardent supporter of the arts. Eventually, all of Shakespeare's plays were performed here for all to see. Shows lasted about 2.5 hours, and it was against the law for women to be on stage. This meant that young men had to play female roles. Actors were expected to be experts in dancing, fencing, tumbling, elocution, acting, and music. Remember, Shakespeare's plays were performed at the Globe Theatre. These are just 5 of the many that were performed there. Now we get to Shakespeare as the famous playwright that we know.
Shakespeare wrote tragedies, comedies, histories, and romances. Some of the tragedies Shakespeare wrote were Romeo and Juliet, Macbeth, Othello, and Hamlet. The definition of a tragedy is an event that causes great suffering, which is why these plays are known as tragedies. Shakespeare's plays, known as histories, usually dealt with a historical figure. They were not always historically accurate, but they did have good fight scenes. While Romeo and Juliet is known as a tragedy, it is also a romance. Others of Shakespeare's plays have a romantic plot within them and could be considered to be romantic. Shakespeare's comedies were just that, comedy. They were plays that were meant to make the audience laugh and deal with less serious subject matter.
With all this information then, why is Shakespeare so famous? Have we answered that question completely?
The simple answer to this question is that his work is still recreated to this day, as you can see from these video depictions of Shakespearean plays. Also, some say that no true stories have been created since Shakespeare. Some make an argument that everything is simply based off of his work.
You may have noticed some parts that were fast-forwarded. This is because not a lot is definitively known about Shakespeare. The only records that we have of him are from church records and his own plays. While this may be, we still recognize Shakespeare as one of the greatest playwrights in the English language history. We also credit him with adding 1,700 words to the English language, words that we still use today.